develop an attitude of flexibility because you can't plan everything. And I think the more that you can learn to juggle and not be too put off by having to maintain flexibility is really important. I think you can't plan everything and you need to be able to manage that. And I think basically just to be really resilient. There's lots of different elements of business, be it, financial or HR and people management. You just have to learn to be really resilient and driven by what you set out to achieve, and don't let anything get in the way of that or turn you off doing it, because, you will come up against obstacles and hurdles. We all do. But just stay true to what you set out to achieve.
This is the InnovaBuzz podcast, helping smart businesses be even more innovative.
Hi innovators, it's great to be back. I hope you've had an awesome day so far. I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really excited to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest today Annabelle Chauncy, co-founder and CEO of the School for Life Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organisation that runs 3 primary, secondary and vocational schools in rural Uganda. We talk about how everything that the foundation does supports its mission of educating their community, how having a strong and empathetic leadership was key to the foundation's spectacular growth, and how as an entrepreneur you need to deliver quality sustainably. It's better to deliver smaller wins and continue to deliver on those than to go bigger and just fall over in the process of too rapid growth. Without further ado then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Annabelle Chauncy. Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm really honoured to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today Annabelle Chauncy, who's the co-founder and CEO of the School for Life Foundation, which is a not-for-profit organisation that runs 3 primary, secondary and vocational schools. I hope that number's right, but maybe you've done more in the meantime, in rural Uganda. So welcome to the podcast, Annabelle. It's a great privilege to have you here as a guest.
I really appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Now, Steph Lorenzo in episode 103 recommended that we interview you, so a big shout out and hello to Steph.
Yeah, she's great. An absolute pocket rocket, Steph.
Yeah, she is, yeah. Now, I believe you studied law at university and probably were set on a law career. So tell us, was that what you wanted to do when you started out as a younger kid, and how come you kind of ended up where you are today?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, it's been an interesting journey, to be honest. I think I was very lucky to go to a fantastic secondary school where I was a boarder and I kind of had the best of both worlds. I would suspend Monday to Friday with my mates, and then on the weekends I'd go home where my parents were on a sheep and cattle farm and, run around like a wild child, riding motorbikes and horses. And, so I had this incredible sort of education, which my parents worked very hard to put me through. And at my high school there was a strong value of service and giving back. And I think at my school we participated in things like Meals on Wheels, Riding for the Disabled, and a whole bunch of different community activities. And when I was leaving school, I kind of was trying to think about what my career was going to look like. And I was 17. I think, we go out into the big bad world at the age of 17 and we really don't necessarily know what we want to do. And I'd worked really hard. I got good marks in the HSC and that afforded me the opportunity to go and study law at Sydney Uni. And I think I didn't really have a real aspiration to be a lawyer, but I thought to myself, look, it's a good foundation. It's a solid foundation for any career and a good stepping stone. And I really wanted to work in international space. That for me at the time looked like working with the UN. I'm very interested in languages and thought that I could contribute to the world that way. And I was halfway through my law degree and I decided to take 6 months off and go over to Kenya to teach English to children. And I was over in Kenya, age 20, and it erupted into civil war. And, I was relatively ill-equipped to deal with any of this. And I was there to teach English to children. Of course, I'm not a teacher, so I was basically useless. But I thought that, I could add some value. And I was evacuated across the border into Uganda. And it was in Uganda that I, sort of found this incredible country full of incredible, inspiring people who need access to education and desire access to education, but just need a bit of a sort of boost up in the right direction to get there. And I really just, I just in that trip decided that was how I'd be able to use my law skills by setting up a charity and doing something, kind of off the sort of conservative track of law, and to do something to make a difference in the lives of others.
So was that where the idea was born, or did you kind of come back home and not know exactly what it was that was going to happen?
I'm a very gung-ho human being, and it was born there and then, age 20. I said, I'm going to go build a school here, and it doesn't take much to build a school over in Uganda, and I'm going to do something to make a difference that's more long-lasting than just kind of giving 3 months of my time. And I remember quite clearly writing in a scrapbook at the airport on the way home the sketch of a business plan. And, sort of what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, who I was going to approach for funding, and what it was going to look like. But, I mean, of course, in between all of that, it does take a lot more time than just sort of scratching notes on a piece of paper to get a business up. And I was really fortunate at the time to have met a friend of mine, Dave Everett, in Kenya. And we met up for a drink when we got home, and we both really had united visions, believing truly that education was the best way to make a difference in Africa. And we decided two heads were better than one, so we founded the organisation together.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, though, that you had the vision and kind of the clarity that was the purpose, that was what form it was going to take, and it was just really about, okay, how am I going to make this happen?
And I think, how am I going to make it happen in a way that delivers sustainably? And for us, the first 2 years were a bit of an R&D phase. We looked at other projects. We looked at other charities. Can we work together with others rather than starting our own thing? Can we, take learnings from other organisations so that we don't make the same mistakes? And going over there and spending quite a lot of time just in the communities and understanding the way the government works and, the people think and what they want and what they actually need, and listening. And that was all such a big component in having the strategy and pulling together what School for Life now looks like.
Well, there's a whole lot of lessons in there, just in that little short paragraph that you've said, but we'll explore those a little bit later. First, tell us more specifically about the School for Life Foundation and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So we are an organisation that's essentially based around empowering local people to help themselves through education. So everything we do empowers local people. We provide employment, we provide education, we provide capacity development and vocational training skills. I describe our work as somewhat of an ecosystem. And it has developed relatively organically. So as I sort of said, we set out to build a school or a number of schools. But what developed was the fact that the kids were coming to school every day on empty stomachs. And a number of our builders came down with typhoid in the first, 6 months of our construction. So we realised they needed clean drinking water. There was no access to electricity, so we ended up putting in solar. We then quite quickly realised that the adults were coming to school every day and asking us for an opportunity to go to school, so we put in adult literacy programs. The farmers were underskilled, so that we decided to put in vocational training to help to capacity develop the farmers. So they're quite kind of holistic in their approach, and they are completely locally led. We've listened to locals, we've consulted with locals, and we employ locals so that this project is going to last for years and years to come.
That's pretty impressive. So how did you, because it's been pretty impressive growth, how did you sustain that and get local resources on the ground to do all those things that you mentioned?
Look, it's been an interesting growth, and it's grown faster and bigger than I'd ever anticipated in such a short period of time. For many years, we were sustaining 100 to 200% growth rate, and that means people, that means revenue raised. And as such, we've had to navigate really fast change, and part of that is working with the local people and ensuring that we don't do things too quickly either over in Uganda, because the last thing we would ever want to do would be to completely disrupt the way that things are done. So basically, I really attribute a lot of our success to finding really strong local leaders and empowering them with a voice and with the resources and capacity that they need to lead each other. And so, I've got an incredible director of education over there, and she's just the most unique person I've ever met, really. She has the power to develop community and to be a voice and to hear and listen to other people in a way that I've never quite seen in another person. And so I do sort of attribute quite a lot of the growth and the success to having people like that within our business and growing them and investing them and trusting them to do what they do best.
So how do you go about fundraising for that growth? Because you mentioned that, the 100 to 200% growth rate was also in fundraising. How do you go about getting the support for that so that you can basically employ those resources?
Question. I am a self-professed fundraising lover. Mm-hmm. It's what makes me tick. I love selling the dream. I love getting buy-in on the vision. I have absolutely no fear asking people for money, which I think has led to us getting funding at a quite large scale quite quickly. You name it, I'm happy to ask for it. So it's been interesting, but I think one of the big strong growth strategies that we've undertaken is regular giving and getting a subscription-based model of fundraising. So that's primarily come through our child sponsorship program. So getting people to donate $50 a month to educate a child, and that pays for the child's 3 meals a day, their uniforms, their books, all that sort of thing. But then equally it provides the sponsor with the opportunity to communicate with the child, to have some sort of level of ownership over the donation and the impact that they're creating. And I think in any exchange there needs to be, in any sort of situation like this, there needs to be a value exchange so that, we're not just taking money and just walking away and going and doing anything that we want with it. It's reporting back on impact. It's making sure that we're listening to our donors and hearing what they want to hear, and giving them what they want to hear. So it's been quite interesting. I guess we've also got a number of kind of key initiatives that have been successful. We've got a black tie fundraising ball that we host in Sydney every year. That grew from $100,000 raised net profit to now over $560,000 raised in a single night. Wow. And we work quite closely with a number of key corporates as well, so good corporate partnerships, and then sort of growing our community fundraising strategy, which is things like come climb Mount Kilimanjaro for School for Life and raise $4,000. So not only are you sort of physically challenging yourself, you're also challenging yourself to give back and to help the charity. So it's been interesting. I've had to kind of keep on my toes. I'm very passionate about it. I love selling stuff, and I love the fact that I can honestly look you in the eye and say that 30 cents a day will feed one of our kids 3 meals. So there is that really strong, there's that strong value, and quite often when you go through capital growth to the level that we've gone through, when I'm sitting with some of the higher net worth individuals and I'm saying to them, if you give me $40,000, I can go and build a 500,000 litre water tank. And I mean it when I say the minute that donation hits our bank account, I've got the guys out there building it. Yeah. And I think people like that. They like to feel that their donations are having impact.
So just out of interest, whereabouts is the facility in Uganda?
Yeah, sure. So we're located approximately an hour's drive west of Kampala, which is the capital city. So we're technically central Uganda. We are off the beaten track a bit. So one of our key qualities and values is that we educate rurally, because that's where the schools are most needed. We own 12.5 acres of land at one site, and then 11 kilometres away from the other, from that one, we own 30 acres of land. So we run 2 primary schools that filter their graduates into one larger secondary school.
And how did you end up in those locations?
That's a good one. It's, as strategic as you wish you could be about leasing old system land title in Uganda made for a challenge. Ideally, we would have actually owned one block of land, but, you've got to get your hand on that piece of paper, and it's old system, and that means that if you don't have that piece of paper, you don't technically own the land. And land ownership was very important to us as an organisation. We hear all sorts of horror stories about people building on other people's land, and then all of a sudden they take it back and turn it into their house, So it was a bit of a process of elimination, really. It was ensuring that there was a clear title, so we didn't want any encumbrances, and then B, ensuring that it was affordable, C, ensuring that all parties came to the table. So with the one piece of land that we owned, there were 28 members of the family that needed to sign that title transfer. So we needed to make sure that all 28 of those people were happy to sell the land, because if even one of them wasn't happy, then the deal was off. So yeah, that was a complicated process. Finding the actual piece of paper, just as complicated a process, because there's no electronic system for land titles. It is literally, there are rooms and rooms of pieces of paper with basically no system. Yeah. So you've got to sort of needle in a haystack, try and find these pieces of paper before you even contemplate handing over money. In Uganda, electronic funds transfers at the time didn't exist, and that meant that we transacted in cash. So for one block of land, the 30 acres, we transacted $180,000 in cash. And to put that into perspective, $1 in Australia is 2,800 shillings in Uganda. So we were transacting in literally wheelbarrows of cash.
So you're rolling up in the big limousines with bunches of suitcases.
I mean, some of the stories, you couldn't write a book about it. You just go, what is my life? But look, it's a growing economy. It's a fast-moving city. It's, in Kampala particularly, the systems have grown immensely over the 10 years that I've been working there. And certainly some of the Wild West stories that we used to have, we probably don't have as many now.
Yeah. How stable is the government there right now?
Look, it's stable. We've had the same government since 1986. The president is Museveni, and he is running, a relatively smooth show. He's over 80 now, and he's been in for a very long time. So he's not killing anyone or maiming anyone, but on the flip side of it, we've probably not seen the amount of investment in welfare and infrastructure that we would have hoped.
Yeah, and the danger there, obviously, with somebody that's been in power that long is succession sort of plans, right?
Yeah, they are going through a large kind of conversation around that at the moment. There have been some attempts at a constitutional amendment to hand the title down to his son, which is causing a little bit of kind of frustration. But also, perhaps it is time. And I'm not saying that it should be his son, but I think it is probably time that he hands over the reins. So it'll be an interesting place to watch, and I'm just hoping from our perspective that things run smoothly.
Well, it would be heartbreaking to have invested in so much stuff there and then suddenly see those people plunged into total uncertainty or maybe worse.
But I guess what I will say is, that's sort of the beauty in a lot of ways of education and capacity development, because it's something that you can't take away, and if somebody has the education in their mind versus, a check in their hand, they're going to be able to use that education whether we're there or we're not. I guess, right. That's the value.
Yes, I think, investing in education is something that unfortunately is overlooked by a lot of people. We kind of take it for granted in the West that we have that opportunity, but governments don't really put a lot of value on it in terms of making sure that's available in a broader sense. And I was speaking, in fact, I'm just doing some editing before I jumped on the show here, of a podcast episode where we spoke with Jill Hicks, who I don't know if you know, Mad for Peace and London bombing survivor. And, one of her strong messages is, getting education out there and giving people an alternative to the hopelessness of kind of violent extremism.
Yeah, and there's no greater gift, in my view, that you could give somebody than a quality education. There's no better way of changing somebody's future and the choices that they'll have than giving them that gift.
Yeah. All right. Now, you mentioned a few things that I'd just like to follow up on a little bit. So learning from other organisations so you don't make the same mistake, and obviously not reinventing the wheel. You talked about listening to the community there, and listening to the adults when they came along and said, well, we'd like some education too, listening to the local authorities. And also when we talked about donors, you talked about listening to the donors in terms of what they thought would add value back to them from the donation that they've had. So tell us first about the whole philosophy around dealing with some of the challenges of this rapid growth through what you learn from other organisations.
Yeah, look, I'm still learning. It's been interesting because, of course, you have fast growth, and then one of the challenges that we've faced, particularly here in Australia, is that your systems don't always support you. So, we're now kind of going backwards and trying to implement systems that are going to support that level of growth. I think, I'm constantly talking to other NFP leaders. I'm talking to other business owners and CEOs about how to run a tighter and more efficient ship. And I think as long as you just continue to commit yourself to the process of developing and growing and changing and being open-minded to the fact that you are going to make mistakes, you can certainly, sort of garner a lot from that. I think the other person who's been quite pivotal for me has been another Australian. Her name's Gemma Sasia. She built a foundation called the School of St Jude's over in Tanzania. She's about 8 years ahead of us, and she's running a very similar show. And so I guess just learning from some of the things that she's done and constantly staying in communication with her about what mistakes she made and what not to do has been really important. And she's facing a lot of the same challenges that we're up against. And, we've just walked into the commencing our first year of secondary school. So to go to her and say, what do I do, what do I not do, has been very valuable, very, very valuable.
Yeah, that's really good. Let her make the mistakes and then you learn from them.
Yeah. Just be humble enough to ask and ask for advice before you make the mistakes yourself. And I think as we continue to grow, and as I've sort of said, it has been very, very fast growth. What I've also realised is that you don't need to be the best at everything yourself. So in the not-for-profit space, there seems to be a lot of organisations doing things in similar spaces but not collaborating around them. And so, for instance, I'm interested in microfinance to help to lift my community out of poverty and help them to become economically sufficient. But the problem is that, I don't want to be a bank. Like, I don't want to start doing microloans. So, what's logical then is to look for an organisation that we can partner with, because I don't want to go down the route of making all these mistakes myself when somebody's already done it.
Yeah.
And that's also obviously helps you scale faster and helps you, ensure that you don't have mission creep. I'm interested in education, and I want to make sure that this works for the long term, not becoming a bank and giving microfinance loans,
Yeah, there's a real risk there that you overextend yourself from a business point of view, and then suddenly something isn't sustainable and impacts the other areas, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And also you've got to look at ROI, how are you actually measuring what you're putting into this versus what you're getting out of it? Because at the end of the day, we set out to provide quality education, and a lot of the other ancillary services that we're doing have been sort of put into the plan in order to achieve quality education. If my kids aren't eating 3 meals a day, they're going to be hungry and they're not going to be able to learn well. So that supports the mission that is quality education. So just ensuring that everything kind of feeds back into the key objectives.
Yeah, that's you sound like you're doing everything that people in business kind of stumble upon, even though, it's obvious that that's what you should be doing. But So how do you generate more interest then and get new fundraising activities or new fundraising sources on board?
It's a constant ideation process. It's constantly, one of my challenges or one of my frustrations probably, I'm quite an honest person and maybe I'm going to get in trouble for this, but one of my frustrations is that the charitable space can be relatively uncommercial, and often, people have great intentions, but they don't actually try and deliver things commercially. And I think fundraising is one of those spaces where it seems like everyone's fishing in the same pool but doing the same thing in order to achieve a result. And, so for instance, School for Life isn't going to go into face-to-face marketing, having people out on the streets with clipboards trying to get people to sign up to regular giving. That's not, I don't want to spend $100,000 on doing that. I don't want to spend $100,000 on getting call centres of people cold calling in order to try and get support, because in my view it just doesn't work, and it's not innovative. It doesn't engage people. So we are constantly working on it. I think one of the best kind of products that I've got is I've got a couple of schools. I've got 680 kids. I've got a unique opportunity to partner, through the sponsorship program, to partner a family with a child, an Australian family with a child in Uganda. We've got, for instance, one of the initiatives I did last year was I built a virtual reality piece so that I can show prospective funders and corporate boardrooms and high school students here in Australia what it feels like to spend a day in a life of a child in Uganda. So I guess trying to keep ahead of the game, trying to keep things fresh, not trying to do the same thing as everybody else just because that's what they're doing and that's what they say is working. And that comes through strategy sessions with the team. That comes through ideation. It comes from all sorts of things, just constantly reading and keeping up to date with what's happening and how can we differentiate ourselves in a very crowded space. Yeah.
Well, you've got a lot of the same challenges as most small businesses do have. How big's your team? How big's your team?
120, but 105 of them are based in Uganda. 115 of them are based in Uganda. So I keep things exceptionally lean here in Australia. I really want to get the dollar straight across there.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing. Yeah, well, we're undertaking still significant capital growth over in Uganda. So 65 of my team are construction.
Yeah. So most of the people are actually on the ground building things. Absolutely. or in the teaching.
Yeah. Educating, the cooks, security, maintenance, construction, counsellors, nurses, music teachers, the whole kind of operation, and they are all Ugandan.
That's great.
So, all the money trying to get it right to where it needs to be.
Yeah, and I like that because I think a lot of charities make that mistake. They kind of grow to a point of having a big administrative overhead, and so some of them I look at and I feel as though, well, if I support them, a lot of the money gets swallowed up and doesn't actually end up in the hands of those people that I would like to support. Yeah, definitely.
I'm all for running a charity like a business, 100%. And I think if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of it, you also have to run efficiently, and you have to ensure that your mission is what you're pushing towards, and you're not just deciding just to add humans to, your staff because it just is easier or quicker or whatever, and all of a sudden, you're spending 75% of the money that you raise on a team in order to raise it. It's so important to keep your overheads at least less than 20%, particularly when you're asking people and looking in the eye and saying, we want to build schools in Uganda. We want to do something to make a difference.
Yeah.
You got to get it there. You got to deliver on the promise.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So is there something that you really worry about? Something that keeps you awake at nights?
Look, a few things. I guess sustainability is one. It's ensuring that we can sustain what we've created. And as we've grown, we've undertaken this growth period, but now what I sort of am navigating with my team is, we call it, a growth mindset to one of sustainability over there. So how can we do things better and more efficiently, more effectively? How are we monitoring and evaluating the work that we're doing? And then to add to that, how can we then lift the community out of poverty so that they become able at some point in time to pay their own school fees and they don't need us anymore? So I'm constantly sort of strategizing around what does it look like to lift the community out of poverty? How can we help the farmers become more productive? How can we give people access to microloans? How can we give them access to education to help them to become employed? So that's probably the big one for me. That's the burning one, because I want to scale. I want to do more of this. I want this to be bigger. I want to affect more humans. I want to make more change, but I also don't want to create a money pit and to get 5 years down the track and be running on a $6 million operating budget with no means of sustainably raising that revenue.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess ultimately you probably want to get to the stage where you get teams of people, maybe even coming out of your schools, that go on and start up replicas of your model.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and it's interesting, so many of the kids, the teachers really are their role models.
Yeah.
And, they live in mud huts. They've got no access to clean water. They've got 8 to 10 brothers and sisters. And they come to school every day and they see incredible teachers who are passionate about their work and well presented and, and are really, they're the beacons and the role models for the kids. And so when you ask them what they want to be when they grow up, so many of them do say that they want to be teachers, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. All right, this has been really fascinating. Now I'd like to move on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round. It's designed to help our audience that are primarily innovators in their field with some tips from your experience. And I think, you've got lots of really good advice that is already seeped through in terms of sharing some of the experiences in building the School for Life Foundation. So I've got 5 questions and hopefully we'll get some really inspiring answers from you.
I hope so.
So what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
I think maintain a really active mind, read as much as possible, talk to people from different fields. You never know where an idea is going to come from. And I think the more that you can keep actively bettering yourself and, becoming knowledgeable about things that aren't necessarily in your specific field, I think the more likely you are to be innovative.
Yeah, great advice. I love that. And, reading and talking to people and looking in different fields.
Never stop learning, and never stop talking to people and never stop asking questions, because I think that's where the real innovation comes. That's where the real ideas stem from asking questions and being curious,
Yeah.
Why do things work that way? Could we do them better? Are there, more efficient ways of doing things?
Yeah, curiosity is an undervalued asset, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So,
we all get busy and that's hard, You do get busy and then it's like, I don't have time to read more or think more or, create more or, be curious. And I get it. I'm running a crazy week myself, but I think those moments that you do step out and take a little bit of time out of the doing and being inside of the business are those moments where you can actually innovate and become more effective.
Definitely. And as you said earlier, we're all still learning. And I sort of reminded of that. I went to Monash University here in Melbourne and their motto is Ancora Imparo, which is Latin for I'm still learning. And at the time, I didn't really pay much attention to that. But since I've gotten older and older, I realised, hey, that's actually part of my core values.
It's true.
So,
yeah, absolutely. You don't want to decay. If you're not learning, you're kind of decaying.
Absolutely. Kind of Yep. So what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Stepped out of the business to kind of give myself a bit of headspace, but then also brought in people from different realms to actually analyze my business, And so one really important thing that I've just done over the last 3 months is conduct an organisational review of my operations in Uganda. And I did that through bringing a couple, one of whom was the management consultant from Macquarie Bank and one of whom was an organisational psychologist, so an exec coach basically, as a team, over to Uganda to analyse what we were doing and how we were doing it and why we were doing it and how could we do it better. And I think those bringing in people and not being afraid to feel a bit vulnerable and to feel a bit criticised then generates so much more bandwidth for ideas and innovation, and how can you produce more with less?
Yeah, that's great advice. So have people that are not involved in the day-to-day running of the business and maybe even totally outside it by the sound of it, take a look and
Definitely
provide some insights.
And it is, sometimes it can feel a bit uncomfortable because you're sort of like, we did this for this reason, and well, yeah, we did, and you know what, maybe it's not working, and that's okay. It's okay to admit that something's not working, that you made a mistake, that you threw a resource at something that hasn't worked. Then as long as you pivot and you move forward in a way that's better and you take on that advice and heed it, that's success. You don't have to be the best at everything straight away, but you need to be able to admit what's not working.
Yeah, and sometimes people like that, they don't know about different things inside the business, so they ask questions that never get asked in the business, and sometimes
that's exactly right.
They ask a question and the answer is, along the lines of, why are you doing that? And, we don't know, actually.
Not really sure.
Yeah.
And especially when we've grown from, I was 20 when I founded the business, and I think, there are a lot of things that you don't know then, and there's a lot of things that I've learned along the way. And in society, it's been, well, that's just the way we've always tried, that doesn't mean that it's right. So you do have to analyse that. You have to work on refining and enhancing, improving,
That's right. All right. So do you have a favourite tool or system for allowing you to kind of find that freedom and be more innovative?
Oh, not really. I think it's workshops, in a lot of ways. And I think it's, continually bringing your staff to the table. Every time I'm in Uganda, which is, up to 6 times a year, it's bringing my managers to the table and hearing from them. And listening, and same in Australia, having continued contact with your team, with the ones who are on the coal face, and taking their advice and listening, and bringing them to the table to be a part of ideation process and strategy setting. Because I think, in order to gain a real sort of ownership over any strategy, they need to be a part of building it. But then also, quite often ideas come from left field. Your finance manager might have an idea that you never even thought of, because they might operate in a different way to a marketing person, So I think it's just, having the humility to be able to accept that good ideas come from everywhere and anywhere, and being able to bring people in and help them to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, that's great advice. Hey, this isn't one of the buzz questions, but it just occurred to me. How do you keep in touch with the folks in Uganda while you're over here?
I have weekly meets with 6 direct reports, and that is across different departments. So we do that via WhatsApp primarily, and then obviously email. They're very well connected over there. The internet's awesome, and we've got good access to telecommunications. So generally WhatsApp, Skype, email. I'm speaking to them nearly every day. So it's, and there's also systems and controls in place when it comes to financial management and things like that.
Yeah, I imagined you would probably be speaking every day, but I thought based on what we were talking about earlier, it might be a bit of a challenge, but yeah. All right. So
I'm there. I'm also there at least every 12 weeks, if not less. So, I've got a pretty strong hand on the business and the way it's going and moving.
Great. All right. So what's, now this is back to the buzz, what's the best way to keep a project on track?
I think having checks and balances in place and key milestones just to ensure that things are actually happening when we've committed to getting them done. I think there's nothing like a bit of accountability to hold you, and milestones to hold you account for what you've promised to deliver on. And I think, in my experience, anytime any project's gone wrong has been due to a lack of planning. So I think, just ensuring that, just constantly checking in on how things are going and whether or not we're hitting our targets. That usually for me. I know it's not very innovative or exciting, but that usually tends to be the best tool for me.
Very effective and actually leads on to the next question about differentiation. A lot of people, because they don't find it sexy or exciting, decide not to do it. So as you say, then things break down. So what is the number one? Sorry, you go. Go ahead.
No, you go. All good.
All right. So what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves?
I think have a strong value proposition and really, really identify what it is as a brand or as an organisation that you do that's different and bring that to the forefront of communication. So, one thing that, sets School for Life apart is we are operating in Uganda. We've got 3 schools. The money that you give me today will go towards those schools. We're not operating in 67 different countries. We are very refined and sort of specific about the projects that we are investing in. So I think really just like putting your best foot forward and working out what it is that makes you different, and then also developing a brand voice and a tone to make sure that case for support is continually and consistently presented.
That's great advice. And, you mentioned earlier making sure that everything supports the mission, which, you're very clear about. So I think that kind of comes into that as well.
Because and look, you get thrown curveballs. I remember once I had a donor that came and said to me that they'd give me money to build a school in a slum in Kampala. And School for Life's vision isn't to build in urban areas, it's to build in rural ones. And it was so sort of, at the time, when I went to the slum and I looked at it and I thought, my God, they need schools so badly. And it's these situations that these children are in are horrendous. But on the flip side of it, it would also be right off mission, and the amount of money that the donor was proposing to give me wasn't nearly enough to even get it off the ground. Yeah. So, I had to say, look, thanks so much, but unfortunately we aren't the organisation that can deliver on that for you. You're going to have to ask somebody else to do it. I get that you're passionate about it, but it doesn't really align with what we've promised that we're going to do.
Yeah. And you can't save the whole world, can you? Unfortunately.
No, and if you do try to, you could fall on your face. And I think the hard thing for me, has been, as a sort of entrepreneur, has been actually understanding that you've got to deliver quality and you've got to deliver sustainably, because it's better to do something smaller but be able to continue to deliver on that than it is to go and try and do too much and then just fall over in the process of it.
That's right. Yeah. And I think, you mentioned sustainability quite a lot throughout the interview, and I think that's really key here in terms of having this actually create a difference that's there in, let's say, 20, 30, years. 40, 50 years, even 3 or 4 generations. Yeah,
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's where it is so tempting, because, in a lot of ways a donor will say, it's quite easy in some ways for me to sell classrooms and sell, water tanks and solar electricity systems, because there's some level of ownership from the donor over that. And I could probably go out and get a heap of money just to build buildings, but realistically what's important is what's happening between the walls of those classrooms, not even whether it's the state-of-the-art classroom. It's whether or not the teacher knows how to teach the kids, whether or not the kids are even engaged, whether they're healthy enough to be able to concentrate to learn. And so it's just making sure that you just stay core on that.
Yeah, great advice. So what do you see as, you talked a little bit about your plans longer term and so on. What do you see as the future in the shorter to medium term?
There's a few things in the woodworks. I'm sort of, at the moment we're working on a combined community uplift and investment strategy. So community uplift, again, sort of what I spoke to earlier, which is mobilising the community to become more productive. So how do we do that? So we're working around those sorts of partnerships primarily. Who will we partner with in order to help to build the community? Investment through a range of different things, potentially looking at, would it work for us to develop a corpus so that we had a bit of a baseline of funding? We haven't kind of gone into that as of yet. And then, of course, scale for me is really important. So as we refine our model and we consolidate and we look at what's working and what's not, how do we then scale and do more of these education centres? Doesn't even necessarily have to be in Uganda. It could be in Australia. It could be in the Indigenous space in Australia. How do we find great local leaders and empower them to help themselves and each other?
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing how those things develop and keeping track of it. So what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to any business owner who wants to be a leader in their field and a leader in innovation?
Oh, number one, it's a tricky one. I think develop an attitude of flexibility, because you can't plan everything. And I think the more that you can learn to juggle and not be too put off by having to maintain flexibility is really important. I think you can't plan everything and you need to be able to manage that. And I think basically just to be really resilient. There's lots of different elements of business, be it, financial or HR and people management. You just have to learn to be really resilient and driven by what you set out to achieve, and don't let anything get in the way of that or turn you off doing it, because, you will come up against obstacles and hurdles. We all do. But just stay true to what you set out to achieve.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I see a lot of people, they have some little setback and they take it very personally. They kind of, act hurt. Well, they are hurt over it, whereas, it may just be a fairly innocuous business decision. You don't know what's going on for the other person. And
yeah, definitely. And I think, in business, in most businesses, you're dealing with humans, and humans are unpredictable. Yeah. You can't control what you get out of them, and I think that's part of it for me, has been understanding that and as I've grown the business, getting a further understanding, and just, as I say, just not letting the little things get in the way of the bigger mission, because those little things, that noise will be there all the time. You have to learn to let go of some of it in order to do bigger stuff.
Yeah.
If you get too bogged down in the little stuff, you're never going to be able to achieve big things.
Yeah, I love that. So being flexible, adaptable, resilient, and keeping the big picture in mind, the mission. All right.
Yeah,
thanks,
and
Annabelle.
I think the other... Sorry, you go.
No, you finish off.
I was going to say the only other thing I was going to say was just look after yourself as well in all of it, because I think if you're not good for yourself, you're not going to be good for anyone else.
Yeah, that's it.
Health is a really big thing for me. I go to the gym every day, eat really well, and you've got to maintain a clear headspace by looking after your own body and your own health, because when 20 people are running at you for direction and you're falling apart in the corner because you're so stressed and you're sick or you're unhealthy, you can't be a good leader.
Yeah, that's absolutely priceless advice as well. So thanks for adding that. Thanks, Annabelle. It's been really great to talk to you today. This has been really informative, and I think there's so many lessons out of what you've done in building the School for Life Foundation from essentially nothing to where it is today. Lessons for other charities, but also lessons for small business. So first of all, where can people reach out and say thank you for what you've shared today? And then secondly, how can people get involved and help?
Yeah, sure. So they can jump on they can contact me by Twitter or email. My Twitter is Chauncy, and then they can jump on and email us at hello@schoolforlife.org.au, or visit our website, which is www.schoolforlife.org.au. Lots of different ways of getting involved: volunteering, sponsoring a child, or coming along to some of our events. All of those would be fantastic.
Yeah, and the events are listed on the School for Life website, so we'll post links to that in the show notes for the episode. All right.
Thank you very much.
Finally then, who would you like me to interview on a future InnovaBuzz podcast and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. Have you met Jordan O'Reilly?
No, I haven't met Jordan.
Okay, you should meet Jordan O'Reilly. He's an amazing young Australian who's doing a lot in the disability space. Mm-hmm. He founded an organisation called Fighting Chance, and now he's founded another organisation, I think, called Jigsaw. He's mobilising people with disabilities into employment. Really incredible person.
Okay, well, that sounds like a really good person to have on the show. So, Jordan, keep an eye on your inbox for an invitation from us, courtesy of Annabelle Chauncy.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us today, Annabelle, on the InnovaBuzz podcast. I've really enjoyed this. I've learned a lot.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I wish you all the best for the School for Life, and look after yourself and look after your team. And we will post all the links so that people can check it out, but also see whether there's a way they can get involved as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Annabelle.
Well, that was fun. I hope you learned as much from the conversation with Annabelle as I did. All the ideas and tips that Annabelle shared with us can be found at innovabiz.co/Annabelle Chauncy. That is ANNABELLECHAUNCY. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/Annabelle Chauncy. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Annabelle there, as well as links to the School for Life Foundation website where you can find ways to get involved. Annabelle suggested I interviewed Jordan O'Reilly of Fighting Chance on a future InnovaBuzz podcast. So Jordan, keep your eye on your inbox for an invitation from us to the InnovaBuzz podcast, courtesy of Annabelle Chauncy of the School for Life Foundation. Stay connected. Head on over to iTunes or Stitcher or Pocket Casts and subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast so you make sure you'll never miss another episode. We'd also love you to leave us a review because what you think matters. Take some of the ideas you've heard today and apply them in your business. Any thoughts, ideas, suggestions or questions, share them in the comments below the blog post. And remember, if you want to get better marketing results than you ever have, join our fantastic LinkedIn community at the Transformational Marketing Academy. All you have to do is go to innovabiz.co/TMAC. It's free to join. Hope to see you there soon. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember to be awesome and keep innovating.